All right, let's get into one of the most incredible and honestly most overlooked stories in all of world history. We are going to connect some serious dots today between a revolution of enslaved people in the Caribbean, the absolute collapse of Napoleon's dreams of an empire, and believe it or not, the massive expansion of the United States.
So you know the story, right? We all learned it in school. 1803. Thomas Jefferson makes maybe the greatest real estate deal in history. He buys the Louisiana Territory from Napoleon for a steal. Boom. The United States doubles in size overnight. But have you ever really asked why? I mean, why would Napoleon, a guy completely obsessed with building an empire, just sell off a chunk of land that massive?
Well, the simple story we're always told is that Napoleon needed cash for his wars in Europe. And that's not exactly wrong, but it's what we call a lie by omission. It leaves out the most important part. The real truth? Napoleon didn't even want to sell Louisiana. He had to. He sold it because his entire grand plan for a North American empire was completely and utterly shattered by the only successful slave revolt in all of human history.
See, Napoleon had this huge vision for a self-sufficient American empire. The colony of Saint-Domingue, what we now call Haiti, was supposed to be the crown jewel, the economic engine, cranking out insane wealth from sugar and coffee. And the massive Louisiana Territory, that was going to be the breadbasket, supplying all the food and lumber. But that dream, it died. It died the moment he sent his own brother-in-law with an elite army, up to 50,000 of his best troops, to go and crush that revolution. That entire army was, well, it was annihilated.
So let's just let that sink in. This is the absolute core of the story. The massive size of the United States today is a direct consequence of the victory of formerly enslaved Africans in Haiti. If they hadn't won, Napoleon's American empire might have actually happened. And the map of North America, well, it would look completely different.
Now, to really get why this revolution happened, you have to understand the place itself. The French called Saint-Domingue the Pearl of the Antilles. And for them, it was. It was the single wealthiest, most profitable colony on the entire planet. But all of that wealth, all of that shine, was built on a system of just unimaginable brutality. It was an economic model, a grinder, that was literally designed to kill people.
Get your head around this number for a second. 40%. Almost half of all the sugar that was fueling Europe, all the cafes, all the fancy desserts, it all came from this one tiny island. It was an economic juggernaut, pumping out a product that was basically the 18th century version of oil.
And it wasn't just sugar. 60%. More than half of all the coffee in Europe came from Saint-Domingue too. You see, this wasn't just some backwater colony. This was the absolute engine of France's global economy. It generated more wealth than all 13 of Britain's American colonies combined.
But here's the horrifying math behind all that money. The system was so brutal, the work so deadly, that the French plantation owners actually did the calculations. And they figured out it was cheaper, more profitable, to work an enslaved person to death in just 3 years and then just buy a new person from Africa than it was to bother keeping them alive. This wasn't a tragic byproduct. It was the business model.
Now, this brutal system of just constantly replacing people, it created a demographic time bomb. You see, unlike in the American colonies, where many enslaved people had been born there for generations, the vast majority of adults in Saint-Domingue were African-born. And they weren't just farmers. Many of them were prisoners of war, captured in conflicts across Africa. They remembered what it was like to be free, and they definitely remembered how to fight.
And this is such a critical point. This was not an uprising of disorganized, desperate people. The people leading this revolution carried incredible knowledge with them. They were veterans of African civil wars who understood military strategy. They came from complex societies like the Mali Empire that had things like constitutional governance. They were the heirs to incredible intellectual traditions from places like Timbuktu, and their spiritual systems like Vodou became this incredibly powerful tool that unified people from hundreds of different backgrounds into one cohesive revolutionary force.
So when that spark was finally lit, the explosion wasn't random. It was strategic, it was coordinated, and it turned out to be absolutely unstoppable. This was a war fought with a very, very clear goal: liberty or death.
The spark came during a secret ceremony in August 1791 at a place called Bois Caiman. You have to imagine it, part spiritual ritual, part military war council. And a leader named Duddy Bookman stood up and delivered what was basically a declaration of war, not just on the French people, but on their entire ideology. This wasn't a prayer for help, it was a call for vengeance.
And the effect was immediate and just staggering. Within a week of that ceremony,
1,800 plantations were up in flames. This wasn't chaos. This was a systematic dismantling of the entire industrial complex of slavery. And over the next decade, under the military genius of Toussaint Louverture, they didn't just defeat the French. They defeated the Spanish, and they defeated the British, who lost a catastrophic 100,000 soldiers trying to take the island. By 1803, they had destroyed Napoleon's final massive invasion, and in 1804, Haiti declared itself the world's first free black republic.
But this incredible victory, the one that secured Haiti's freedom, it had these monumental and just tragically different consequences. It basically set two nations, Haiti and the United States, on completely separate paths.
And right here, this is the final, heartbreaking irony of the whole story. Napoleon's defeat in Haiti directly leads to the U.S. getting all that land for just $15 million. But Haiti, in 1825, France sailed a fleet of warships back to Haiti and, under the threat of invasion and being re-enslaved, forced the new nation to pay France an insane amount of money, 150 million francs. And who was that money for? It was to compensate the former slaveholders for their lost property. That debt would go on to cripple Haiti's economy for more than 100 years.
So you see how it all connects. One nation's manifest destiny was built on the back of another nation's revolutionary victory, a victory for which they were punished for generations. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other big stories from history, the ones we think we know so well, are shaped not by what's in the textbook, but by what's been intentionally left out.